people showed. So my name is Peter. I'm from AnyBlock Analytics, and I'm going to tell you something about other Ethereum-based blockchains. So I'll go quickly about, or I'll show you later. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit who we are, what we do, and why I can talk about this topic, why it's interesting to look for other Ethereum-based blockchains and the scope of this talk. Then I'll cover the test chains, probably all of you know these, and the public chains, and also the more interesting consortia chains. So we are a team of 6 based in Mainz, Germany. We established the company in 2018, and we do development or operations of a blockchain data service. This is called AnyBlock Index, and you can actually see some data over there. And we index all 19 publicly available Ethereum-based blockchains. It's growing steadily, and you can use SQL and Elasticsearch to actually query it. Yeah. And it is also available as virtual appliance. So if you have a consortium chain, you can actually use the virtual appliance, install it in your private or consortium network. The main mission of our company is to integrate blockchain in business processes, and we do that by providing method, tools, and data. Here are a couple of use cases, what you can actually do with it. For example, the most easiest one is you can watch for token movement. It's quite easy to do business intelligence with our data. So if you're, for example, a Tableau user, you can just point Tableau to our SQL index. It'll discover the data model, and then you're happy to query away. This leads to on-chain data inserts and dashboards, and we actually host those dashboards, for example, with Metabase, but you can also use your own dashboard solutions. And if a blockchain is an infrastructure element, a smart contract could be considered an application, and therefore if you're a company, you probably want to do application monitoring if this is involved in your business process. So with us, it's very easy to do application monitoring and use your existing application monitoring suite. On the right side, you see Grafana and Kibana. It's very easy to plug them on top of our data. So why this talk, or why is this interesting? First of all, on other Ethereum-based networks, the wider ecosystem is also growing. So growth is not just happening on Ethereum mainnet. There's also innovation, evolution, so new things appearing, and there might be business opportunities. So code compatibility is pretty high. Actually, some of them specifically state that they want to be on the same level as Ethereum mainnet. So therefore, it's very easy to port existing applications. So if you're a developer, you can just deploy your code on the other chains. And there might be other advantages like cheaper gas price, faster block times, and maybe just interesting user groups for your product or your stablecoin or whatnot. There might also be disadvantages. For example, governance might not be really clear, so it highly depends on the POA chain who's actually running it. These networks might be very small. Actually, I have one example that's like about, I think, between 5 and 50 nodes. We're not really sure. It highly depends on the time when you're looking. And they might be on an old protocol version. Usually there's also proprietary extensions because these chains exist for a reason. I'm going to show a few of them, and then they extend their functionality. But most of the time it's very easy to port your code over, maybe not the other way back. Oh, there you are. So I was able to find 2 major sources for other EVM-based blockchains. One of it is ChainID. So I think there were some 40-something, and another one is the chain specs of Open Ethereum. Used to be Parity. I'm still going to call it Parity though. So I discovered some 60 networks, and if you exclude some 20 testnets, that leaves us with 40 Ethereum-based mainnets, and they are all listed on there. This presentation will be available for download, I suppose. So, and there's weird ones, and actually picked 2 that weren't stable last week, so I excluded them again. So this is a moving target. There will be more chains, and they're going off again. So this was the state from last week. So first, this is probably nothing new, but here are the testnets. Robson, proof of work testnet, quite old, November 2016. The successor of Morden. Actually, who of you is a developer? Does anybody use Robson? There are a few. Have you been to Afri's talk why you're not supposed to use? Yes, I couldn't attend. But anyways, Gurley is falling afterwards. So this is Robson. This is Rinkeby. Also nothing specific, special besides it's using ClickPower consensus algorithm. And I also always display what's it supported by. So this is Geth, Nethermind, and Hyperledger. So the client base is a little bigger. This is Kovan. We use Kovan a lot. It's only supported by parity. But the next one is Gurley. And this is kind of the better pick, I suppose. I'm not sure what Afri said, but I suppose this is where you're supposed to go to test. It's quite nice. It has a 15-second average block time, and it should be, it is fully compatible. Also supported by many more clients, Geth, Parity, Nethermind, Hyperledger, Besu as well. This leaves us with the Ethereum Classic networks. This is Mordor. This is their latest. It's the replacement of Morden. Some 12 seconds proof of work algorithm going on. It can be used, but also there is a proof of authority testnet since also 2017, which is Coddy, which is kind of their version of Gurley. And this is essentially it, because with all the other chains I looked at, they have their own testnet, and I didn't want to show you a page for each. It's not that spectacular. So I'll tell you the testnet names if I come to the network. This leaves us with the public chains. This one you know, who is actually running anything on mainnet in here? Maybe 10%, 15%. Okay, is anyone running anything on Classic? Oh, shame. You might want to. So the thing is, I noticed it's like on Wikipedia, it's exactly the same description what it is. And it does pretty much the same. And there might be different users and different scenarios. So why not? Well, I come to that in a sec. For example, gas price is cheaper. It is a smaller network though, so there might be offsets. But anyways, I wasn't an expert in these two chains, and I don't say one is better than the other or whatnot. But over here you see quite a few arguments where you can compare them. For example, just if you look at the transactions in the last 24 hours or average per hour, so you can see quite a difference. But anyways, it's live. I'm not sure how many nodes are on there. It's hard to find that out. I took that from BitInfo charts, and they have a lot of parameters you can actually pick. So if you're interested in going to EthCC and see how that compares to Ethereum, have a look at their website. Now this is the first one probably nobody has heard of. This is a proof of work network, and it's quite old. It's established 2019. It's called Mix Blockchain, and it focuses on censorship resistance, inclusion, and empowerment of the individual in the context of storing data or of providing data, data economy, especially in context of social networks to prevent vendor locking or censorship. It's quite nice, and I picked it because they have, I think, more than 50 nodes, something between 50 and 100 nodes the last time I looked. And there's something, this is from their website, and this is just one piece where one could say they are innovating. I'm not sure how good this is, if this is of any use for anyone else, but it nicely states how they work from their smart contracts to an item store smart contract with a hash, and put that item then there, like it starts from here and goes to there, or on the IPFS network. So it's also open source. So if there's anything of use that can be interchanged between, for example, Ethereum Classic, to pick something else besides Ethereum mainnet. So now this is a tiny one. This is my last example for proof of work chains. They are focusing on transparency, stability, and community. And I already mentioned that between 5 and 50 nodes last time we looked. It's also not so easy to find that out. Allyism, You probably never heard of them. And this is one representation of the long tail. This is how most of the chains I looked at look like. Tiny nodes, very specific use cases, very specific community. And actually, I had 2 more, but they broke on their way. So last time I looked, for example, we indexed Musicoin, and this went defunct last week. It might have been or might be online again, I don't know, but I took out the slide. So this is the fate of small networks. They come and go maybe. So this leaves us with consortia chains, and this is where it's getting really interesting, maybe also for the user base and the technology. The most prominent one is PowerCore. Does anybody know what PowerCore is? No? That is interesting. I thought pretty much everybody knows that, because this is a project from Igor, and he just been there exactly at this spot, I think 2 or 3 hours ago, and presented parts of his technology. Anyway, PowerCore network, or Power network, is an autonomous network secured by a group of trusted validators. And these are actually United States notaries. So one big advantage of proof of authority over proof of work is you can pick the notaries or pick the validator nodes operators, and you reduce block time because you put the riddle essentially to 0. Therefore, it's very efficient. There is no problem in the sense of power consumption. It's just another maybe semi-distributed, but distributed blockchain solution. So, and their goal is to be exactly that, fast and inexpensive transactions. That's what it's for. And no influence of companies and something. I think that's on the next page. This is supported by Parity and Nethermind, and their testnet is called SoCall. And they have a huge website, quite a dedicated community. I can highly recommend to check that out. They have other projects. First of all, a few more details. As I mentioned, they want to not have any influence of companies or corporations or governments in there. Therefore, they pick the notaries, and the notaries are known by name. They can actually onboard new notaries, but if you're a validator, if you're a notary who participates in this, you have to operate a node, surely monitor it, participate in the on-chain governance, adding and removing new validators, and participate in the Power Network Community Forum. And you can actually see that. That's quite nicely done. They have the native token is called Power token, and then there's an ERC20 representation of the Power token on mainnet, on Ethereum mainnet. And between those networks, there's a token bridge. And like I think there's 2 hours ago, Igor just presented the new version of this bridge, which is now Universal Message Bridge. And this leads me to one of my main arguments. This is one of these teams. They innovate a lot of stuff, and that floats back to Ethereum mainnet. For example, the Block Scout Explorer is widely used. If you go on any of those networks, the chances are super high that they use Block Scout for their Block Explorer, because it's open source, it works well, it updates nicely, it has a PostgreSQL database backend. This is really great. They do a lot of work. And second line is the decentralized token bridge, which now matured to I think more or less generic event bridge, message bridge between Ethereum-based networks. This is just great. We actually implemented a token bridge between mainnet and another network I will show you in a second. And yes, Igor is around. He's very approachable. This is cool stuff. And another network by them is called the XTie network, and they propose XTie is the ideal currency for everyday payment and transactions. So it's also a proof of authority network, therefore also quite quick in block times. Fees are extremely low, so payments are super fast. Value remains stable as it is based on a stable coin. And yes, you would buy a DAI on mainnet, use the token bridge, and receive XTie on the XTie network. So that is another example of the innovation. This one is supported by Parity and Nethermind. You can actually become a validator. AnyBlock is a validator. They have quite a nice process. I think this is still possible, but they are now trying to move to something called PostDAO. This is another proof of stake DAO innovation by them. we are looking forward to see what they are up to in this regard. Now, this gets even more specific. That is quite a bit of a chain. We are a validator of the Energy Web chain. This is run by the Energy Web Foundation. So this blockchain is designed for the energy sector's regulatory, operational, and market needs. So in short, for example, smart metering, carbon dioxide certificate trades, these things. Validators are big companies like Shell or Elia from France, LO3, or little ones like Oli System, us, or FlexiDAO from Barcelona. So I think right now they have some 20-something validators, and there's also a governance process how to become a validator and what things you need to do to stay a validator. And for them, I also wanted to show this is highly innovative because on the right hand, you can actually see they are thinking of some energy web operation, Energy Web decentralized operating system for renewable energy and distributed energy resources. And this is the basis, currently a Ethereum-based proof of authority network. They call it Core. And on top of that, they are developing toolkits. Origin, for example, for carbon dioxide certificates or renewable energy certificate is already developed, it's live. This is actually used by a company from Elia and by PTT or PTT in Thailand, which is the biggest energy provider in Thailand. So they are highly innovative in this respect, and their big vision is much bigger, and I'm very sure that innovation from this stuff can go back into Ethereum mainnet, or if there's innovative people on Ethereum mainnet with code, they can also deploy their code there. So this is one of those chains I would highly recommend to check out if you're looking for a broader user base. Well, especially in the corporate energy sector, though. This comes now down to the smaller networks. This is another example. This is the Trust Lines TLBC, and this is all about people-powered money. They have a booth downstairs, and I'll show a short demo with an address from them. Their network is, their testnet is called Leica, and it's supported by Parity. So I don't know how many nodes it has, but I'm pretty sure less than 10, or maybe 10 between 20. Last time I looked, it was less than 10. But they are onboarding new validators all the time. They are now calling this minimal viable proof of stake. So you had to apply in the first hand, and then you are now staking a minimal amount of ETH, I think. But if there's any more questions in this respect, the people are actually in the room to answer more questions for Trustlines blockchain. Now we're getting even smaller. This is the last blockchain I would like to introduce. This is called Evan Network. Their idea is to provide technical and a legal framework for the future of the decentralized market economy. They have currently about 12 validators. We intend to become one too, and they are mostly German companies. And they have very strong features in respect to identity, authorization, and data sovereignty, and they are using IPFS for that. The interesting part is they have proof of concepts and prototypes running with nearly a handful of really big German companies. So this stuff is pretty much live. So if you're interested in authorization and data sovereignty, you should definitely give them a look and see what they are up to. Yeah. So now I would like to show like a super short demo what we can do with all those blockchains, and maybe with others in the future. So this is our search interface, and I picked the hash. And I'm now searching for that hash, and it's like super quick because it's Elasticsearch based. And what you can actually see here is it was searching over all these networks. So if you are interested in adding a network, please let us know. It takes us half a day to add another Ethereum-based network, and soon we'll be adding other networks besides EVM-based networks. So we found the address on 3 networks. First of all, on the Trustlines TLBC network, and on Ethereum mainnet, and on 2 testnets. And you can actually click on there. I'll start with this one. This opens up our Explorer. And then you can see this is apparently a transaction. I suppose some ETH is transferred. Yes, 4 ETH have been transferred. So that's just this. And if you go to the Trust Lines Explorer, it actually has a balance. Yeah, and that's essentially it. 11 transactions. We do not resolve transactions yet in Trust Lines. That's too early for us. So, and it also shows where it didn't find the hash. This goes, this was an address. This also goes for blocks, block numbers, transaction hashes. Yes, I think that's it. So, we also have a nice alerting interface. So since we index the blocks, we watch them as they appear. The documentation can be found on our website. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them now. Thanks for having me.
So we still have 10 minutes, so if you have any question, feel free to ask.
Sure. Sorry, I was a bit late for it, unfortunately. But how do you actually get the data from all those chains? You establish infrastructure of nodes of your own nodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We have a bunch of archive nodes, for example, like 2 that are highly valuable and have a few terabytes of SSD disk space in a RAID to actually enable all this.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we're not renting out RPC interfaces just like that. Because for every write, we figure there's at least 10 reads, and the reads from Elastic are way faster, way better, and we all, on the one hand, give you the binary data, but we also translate the data if we have the ABIs, or we already translate one of the functions and recognize that by the function hash. Therefore, our translation rate is 91%. So if you would like to go for time series, for example, or any computational thing, you can actually do that in database, either SQL or Elasticsearch. So that is much better than querying the node. The node is actually reading only necessary if you replay some specific parts. And we also translate the logs. So there's also including internal transactions.
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome.
I was wondering what's the state of the art when it comes to building bridges between Ethereum EVM-based chains. I know that Igor has a solution, the POA bridge. I was wondering whether there were more, and maybe a more speculative, forward-looking question. Can you imagine, so Cosmos has a design with a hub where multiple chains interconnect. Can you imagine a future where, let's say, one of these Ethereum-based chains would be a hub for the other ones?
Yes, I think Igor is the forefront of the state in respect to bridges. We like a lot what they have done, and we already used it, at least in the Ethereum environment. And yes, I can imagine that there will be main chains, para chains, whatnot. But for us, it looks like the Polkadot system is already moving there quite heavily. So, and that is actually something besides for law enforcement, we are looking for Bitcoin-based blockchain first, which is not so sexy in the transaction or in the function calls, EVM, virtual machines part of the system. But right after that, I think substrate-based blockchains, either connected to Polkadot or not, will be a good runner-up in this respect. Okay, so thanks a lot.
First part of the presentation. Yeah. Is it possible to get it?
you have a card, or first of all, there will be videos on this. This will be available on their website. But oh, you want it now? Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope you don't have viruses.
No, no.
Yeah, I can totally do it. Actually, I can do it here.